The autumn sky over Busan Space Center glowed orange as Commander Taewon Park stood at the observation deck. His eyes followed the 7 massive ships as they moved away from Earth. These weren't ordinary ships. They were generation ships, giant vessels designed to carry thousands of people across the stars to start a new life. "All systems are green. Final checks complete," said a voice in Taewon's earpiece. 50,000 colonists were aboard those ships. They would travel to Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth. The journey would take decades, but the colonists would live, work, and raise families on the ships until they reached their new home. Taewon pressed a button on his comm device. "Admiral Jiwoo, Busan Control gives final clearance. You are go for FTL jump." "Received, Commander," replied Admiral Jiwoo Kim. Her voice was steady despite the weight of her responsibility. "We'll send word when we arrive." Taewon watched as the 7 ships, Horizon, Pioneer, Legacy, Venture, Covenant, Endeavor, and the flagship Courage, moved into formation. Each ship was a marvel of human engineering, nearly 2 kilometers long with its own farms, factories, and living quarters. "Activating Hawking drives in 3, 2, 1. Admiral Jiwoo's voice came through the speakers in the control room. The ships began to glow with a blue light. The new faster-than-light drives were experimental, but scientists had tested them for years. This would be the first time humans used them for actual space travel. Space seemed to bend around the ships. Stars in the background appeared to stretch and twist. The ships themselves began to elongate, as if being pulled by some invisible force. Then, in a flash of light that briefly outshone the setting sun, all 7 ships vanished. The control room erupted in cheers. Taewon smiled. The jump had looked exactly as the simulations predicted. "Now we wait for their signal," he said to his team. According to calculations, it would take about 3 days for the ship's first message to reach Earth. 3 days passed. No signal came. 4 days. 5. A week. Taewon barely slept. He stayed at his post, checking and rechecking the communication systems. Nothing was wrong with Earth's receivers. The ships simply weren't sending any messages. After 2 weeks, Earth Space Command launched rescue ships to the last known coordinates of the colony fleet. The rescue teams found nothing, no debris, no radiation, no distress beacons. It was as if the 7 ships had never existed. "We have to face facts," said Director Minji at the emergency meeting 1 month after the disappearance. "The Hawking drives must have malfunctioned. The fleet is lost." Taewon shook his head. "We don't know that. They could have jumped farther than expected. They could be trying to find their way back." But as weeks turned into months, hope faded. Search efforts continued but found nothing. Scientists reviewed the FTL technology and discovered potential flaws, ways the experimental drives might have torn the ships apart or sent them into unknown regions of space from which they couldn't return. A year after the disappearance, Operation New Dawn was officially classified as lost. Memorials were built in cities around the world. The names of all 50,000 missing colonists were engraved on walls of black stone. Children learned about the tragedy in school. Taewon never fully accepted it. Even after he retired from Space Command, he kept a private research lab where he studied the Hawking drive technology. He believed the colonists might still be alive somewhere. "They're out there," he would tell anyone who would listen. "Something went wrong with the jump, but they're survivors. They'll find a way back." Most people thought he was a sad old man who couldn't accept reality. They pitied him. 20 years after the disappearance, interest in space exploration dropped. The loss of so many lives had made people fearful. But slowly, humanity began to look to the stars again. New, safer FTL technology was developed. Small colonies were established on Mars and Europa. By the 50th anniversary of the disappearance, the incident had become a historical footnote. A day of remembrance was still observed, but for most people, it was just another holiday. The Pue. Missing colonists were names in history books, faces in old photographs. Earth had moved on. The galaxy was opening up. Humans had made contact with 3 alien species and joined the Galactic Concord. Few people thought about the lost fleet anymore. No one expected they would ever return. No one imagined that while only decades had passed on Earth, the lost colonists had experienced centuries, and that they had not just survived, but thrived beyond all imagination. Remember to only use quoted content from search results very sparingly. Short quotes of under 20 words should be properly cited, and never reproduce long verbatim text. 50 years had passed since the disappearance of the colony ships. Earth had changed much in that time. Humans had built settlements on Mars, Europa, and 4 planets around nearby stars. They had also met aliens, 3 different kinds. Ambassador Do-Hyun Lee adjusted his blue uniform as he walked through the grand hallway. Today was an important meeting of the Galactic Concord, the group that brought together the 4 spacefaring races. Do-Hyun represented all of humanity. The meeting hall was a huge round room with a glass dome ceiling showing the stars above. 3 other species sat in curved sections around a central platform. The Vordath looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of connected geometric shapes that glinted purple and blue. They were the oldest race in the Concord, having traveled the stars for over 50,000 years. The Mithril floated like colorful clouds of gas contained in special suits. They could change color to show their feelings: green for calm, red for anger, blue for sadness. The Saurian Dominion were tall reptiles with scales that shifted colors. They were proud warriors who valued strength and had the largest fleet in the Concord. Humans were the newest members, having joined just 20 years ago. The other races still treated them like children. The Council recognizes Ambassador Lee. "Day of Earth," announced the Vordath representative, Crystalline Elder Tix. Do-Hyun stepped onto the central platform. He had important news to share. "Esteemed members of the Concord, our deep space monitors have detected unusual activity in the Arcturus sector. The Githrak Empire appears to be moving a large fleet toward Mithril colony worlds. Earth's analysis suggests they plan an attack within 2 weeks. The Githrak were not part of the Concord. They were aggressive 6-limbed beings who believed it was their destiny to rule all other species. So far they had stayed far from Concord space, but lately they had grown bolder." Before Do-Hyun could continue, Zetat of the Saurian Dominion interrupted. The large reptile's scales flashed from green to a dismissive blue. "We have already analyzed this situation. Your human technology is primitive and your military experience limited. The Concord has managed galactic affairs for thousands of years, before your kind even left your planet." Do-Hyun kept his face calm despite the insult. This happened at almost every meeting. Humans offered help or ideas, and the older races dismissed them. "With respect, Delegate Zetat, our analysis uses a new pattern recognition system that—" "Your analysis has been noted," said Elder Tix, cutting him off. "Now we must discuss the trade dispute between the Vordath mining colonies and the Saurian outposts in the Rigel system." Do-Hyun stepped back from the platform. Once again, human concerns were pushed aside. Despite bringing new technologies and resources to the Concord, Earth remained the least respected member. As the meeting continued, Do-Hyun sat quietly, making notes on his tablet. He knew the Githrak threat was real. Earth's new detection systems had clearly shown the enemy fleet's movements. But without the support of the Concord, Earth's colonies could not stand against the Githrak alone. Suddenly, emergency lights flashed throughout the chamber. A Mithril communications officer floated quickly to the center of the room, its gaseous body pulsing with urgent red patterns. "Unknown energy signature detected," the Mithril announced, its translation device making the words sound musical, yet alarmed. "Massive fleet approaching from uncharted space." The room erupted in activity. The Saurian military commander barked orders into a communication device. The Vordath representatives huddled together, crystal bodies clicking as they discussed the threat. "Put it on the main display," ordered Elder Tix. A huge hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed thousands of ships emerging from hyperspace near the edge of Concord territory. Some of the vessels were enormous, larger than small moons. Others were sleek and clearly designed for combat. At the center of the fleet was a structure so vast it seemed impossible, a cylindrical world with continents visible on its surface. "Githrak attack fleet?" asked a Saurian officer. "Configuration unknown," replied the Mithril officer. "Not matching any known Githrak designs, these ships are far more advanced. As the Concorde representatives stared at the display in shock, a communication signal came through on all channels. "This is Admiral Hyun-jin of the Human Federation Fleet. We've returned home." The voice was human, but the term Human Federation was unknown to Do-hyun. He stepped forward, heart racing. "This is Ambassador Lee of Earth Alliance. Identify yourself. We have no record of a Human Federation." There was a pause before the reply came. "Ambassador, we were once called Operation E. New Dawn. Earth believed us lost. We've been elsewhere." Do-hyun felt his legs go weak. The lost colony fleet, not destroyed but somehow transformed into the most powerful armada the galaxy had ever seen. The chamber fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. The balance of power in the galaxy had just changed forever. Chaos filled the Galactic Concorde chamber. The alien representatives shouted over each other as the massive display showed thousands of ships where there should have been empty space. These were not the 7 small colony ships that had disappeared 50 years ago. This was an armada that dwarfed the combined fleets of all Concorde races. "We must ready our defenses," hissed Zitat, the Saurian delegate. His scales had turned bright red with alarm. "Wait," said Do-hyun, holding up his hand. "They claim to be human. We need to understand what's happening." A Vordath officer tapped crystal fingers on a control panel. "Scans confirm the vessels are of human design, but far advanced beyond known Earth technology. The energy readings are unprecedented." The central ship, if it could even be called a ship, was a cylinder so vast it resembled a small world. More than a vessel, it rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity within its hull. Smaller continents and oceans were visible through transparent sections of its exterior. Lights twinkled across its surface like cities seen from orbit. "They're hailing us again," said the Mithril communications officer. The face of a woman appeared on the main screen. She had Asian features and grey-streaked black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Though she appeared to be in her 60s, her eyes held the wisdom of someone much older. "I am Admiral Hyun-jin, Commander of the Human Federation Fleet and Governor. Fear of Starforge." Her voice was calm but carried natural authority. "We request a meeting with representatives of Earth and the Galactic Concorde." Do-hyun stepped forward. "This is Ambassador Lee of Earth. Admiral Hyun-jin, you claim to be from the Lost Colony Fleet, but that's impossible. Those ships couldn't have supported this level of development." Admiral Hyun-jin smiled slightly. "Time works differently where we were, Ambassador. For us, it's been 500 years, not 50. We have much to explain." The Concorde leaders agreed to meet the mysterious humans aboard their vessel. A shuttle was sent to bring Do-hyun and representatives from each Concorde race to the enormous ship now called Starforge. As the shuttle approached, Do-hyun pressed his face to the window. What had once been colony ships were now a civilization unto themselves. The scale was hard to comprehend. Ships the size of cities moved in perfect formation. Some appeared to be gardens or forests contained in transparent bubbles. Others were clearly military vessels with weapon systems beyond anything he had seen before. The shuttle docked in a bay large enough to hold an entire Earth Navy fleet. When the doors opened, Do-hyun and the alien delegates stepped into a vast chamber with a ceiling hundreds of meters high. Plants grew everywhere, and birds flew freely through the space. It felt more like a park than a spaceship. Admiral Hyun-jin waited for them, along with a group of officers in sleek grey uniforms. Behind them stood a man with kind eyes and white hair who wore a long white coat. "Welcome to Starforge," said Admiral Hyun-jin. "This is Science Director Junho, who can help explain our journey." The alien delegates remained cautious. Elder Tix's crystal body clicked nervously. Zitat kept one hand near his ceremonial weapon. "How did you build all this?" asked Do-hyun, gesturing at the world ship around them. Admiral Hyun-jin led them to a large round table, where holographic displays showed the history of their journey. "The experimental FTL jump didn't fail," she explained. "It worked too well. Our ships were thrown through a rupture in space-time into a pocket dimension, a place between normal space and somewhere else." Science Director Junho continued, "In this pocket dimension, time flowed differently. 1 year in normal space equaled about 10 years for us. We found ourselves in a region rich with resources but filled with dangers we had never imagined. Holograms showed strange cosmic phenomena and alien landscapes that seemed to defy the laws of physics. We couldn't return at first, said Admiral Hyunjin. We had to adapt to survive. Our original 7 ships became our first cities. We mined asteroids to build more vessels. We developed new technologies out of necessity. The images showed how the small colony fleet had grown over centuries. Self-replicating machines had built bigger ships. Those ships had built even larger ones. Generation after generation had been born, lived and died aboard the ever-growing fleet. 500. Years of isolation shaped us, said Junho, but we never forgot Earth. We always planned to return home. Do-hyun noticed something in the hologram, strange ships that looked nothing like human designs. You weren't alone in this pocket dimension, he said. Admiral Hyunjin's face grew serious. No, we encountered others. Some became allies. Some did not. The alien delegates exchanged concerned glances. And why have you returned now? Asked Chitat, suspicion clear in his voice. Admiral Hyunjin pressed a button, and the hologram changed to show a familiar alien fleet, the Sheathrak. Because we detected these ships emerging from the same spatial anomaly we used to return. They found a way into the pocket dimension, took technology they shouldn't have and left. They don't understand what they've stolen. She looked each delegate in the eye. We've returned because the Sheathrak now pose a threat to all life in this galaxy. And we're the only ones who can stop them. Do-hyun could hardly believe his eyes as he walked through Starforge with Admiral Hyunjin and Science Director Junho. What had started as a tour had become a journey through an entire world contained within a ship. We have over 30 million people living aboard Starforge alone, explained Hyunjin as they walked along a path beside a flowing river. Above them, the curved ceiling displayed a perfect blue sky with white clouds. Our total population across all vessels is now over 3 billion. 3 billion? Do-hyun stopped walking. But there were only 50,000 colonists on the original ships, Junho smiled. 500 years is a long time, Ambassador. They passed through a market where people sold fresh fruits, handmade crafts, and strange devices Do-hyun couldn't identify. Children played in a grassy area while adults sat at outdoor cafes. If not for the slight curve of the horizon rising up instead of dropping away, Do-hyun might have thought he was in a park on Earth. Tell me how you survived, said Do-hyun. The original ships weren't meant to last centuries. They entered a large building that housed a museum. Inside, Do-hyun saw one of the original colony ships, Venture, preserved as a monument. Though large by Earth standards, it now looked tiny compared to Starforge. The first years were the hardest, said Hyunjin, her voice growing quiet. We had supplies for only a decade. When we realized we couldn't return quickly, we had to adapt. Junho activated a holographic display showing the early days. The pocket dimension we found ourselves in was rich in resources but hostile to human life. Strange energy storms would sweep through space. Radiation levels were higher than in normal space, and there were other entities. The display showed shadowy shapes moving through strange, twisted space. At first, we used the ships as bases, while we mined nearby asteroids, continued Hyunjin. We built habitats, farms, and factories. Each generation improved on what came before. The hologram showed how the colony grew over time, from 7 ships to dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The breakthrough came in year 78, said Junho. We developed self-replicating construction systems, machines that could build copies of themselves, and then work together to build larger structures. The display showed small robot-like machines harvesting an asteroid, breaking it down, and using the materials to create more machines and ship components. Once we had that technology, our growth became exponential, said Hyunjin. 1 machine became 2, 2 became 4, and so on. Within a decade, we had millions of builders creating new vessels. Do-hyun tried to process what he was hearing. But the technology here, it's centuries beyond what we have on Earth. How did you advance so quickly? Junho and Hyunjin exchanged a look. Necessity, said Junho, and help. They moved to another section of the museum where strange artifacts were displayed. objects that clearly weren't of human design. Some seemed to shift and change as Do-hyun looked at them. Others glowed with inner light. "We weren't alone in the pocket dimension," said Hyunjin. "In our third decade there, we encountered the architects. The hologram changed to show beings made of light and geometric shapes. They didn't seem to have physical bodies in the normal sense. The architects had been trapped in the pocket dimension for millions of years," explained Junho. "They were peaceful and curious about us. We formed an alliance. They shared some of their knowledge, and we helped them with practical applications. They couldn't achieve without physical form." "They're with you now," asked Do-hyun. "Some chose to come," said Hyunjin. "Others remained. They're very different from us. Their concept of time and space isn't like ours." They continued walking through the museum. Do-hyun saw displays showing advances in medicine, physics, and biology. The humans of the Federation had extended their lifespans to nearly 200 years. They had mastered gravity control and developed energy sources that drew power from the fabric of space itself. "But why return now?" asked Do-hyun. "After 5 centuries, why come back?" Hyunjin's face grew serious. "We always planned to return home eventually, but about 30 years ago, 3 years in normal space, we detected unusual activity. Someone had found another way into the pocket dimension." The display changed to show familiar ships, the aggressive barbed vessels of the Sithrak Empire. "They discovered an ancient architect outpost," said Junho. "They didn't understand what they found, but they took what they could. The technology they stole is dangerous, especially in the hands of those who don't understand its limitations." "We monitored them after they left," said Hyunjin. "We watched as they began to incorporate stolen technology into their ships. We saw their first tests and the disasters that followed. The hologram showed a Sithrak vessel testing a new weapon. The energy beam it fired ripped a hole in space itself. The tier expanded, consuming the test ship and several nearby vessels before collapsing. "They're playing with forces they don't understand," said Junho. "If they continue, they could create a cascade reaction that would spread through normal space. Entire star systems could be pulled into dimensional ruptures." "So you came back to stop them," said Do-hyun. Hyunjin nodded. "We came back to save everyone, including the Sithrak from themselves." A week after the Human Federation's arrival, alarms blared throughout the Galactic Concord space station. The Sithrak had launched their attack sooner than expected. Their fleet, over 5,000 ships strong, had bypassed Concord early warning systems and was heading straight for the main Mithril homeworld, Etheria. Do-hyun rushed to the command center, where representatives from all races had gathered. The mood was grim. Holograms showed the Sithrak fleet advancing rapidly. Strange energy readings emanated from their largest vessels, evidence of the stolen architect technology. "Our combined fleets can't reach Etheria in time," said the Saurian commander, scales dark with worry. "The colony will fall before help arrives." Admiral Hyunjin stepped forward. "The Human Federation will handle this." The aliens turned to her with surprise and doubt on their faces. "Admiral, with respect," said Elder Tix of the Vordath. "The Sithrak fleet numbers over 5,000 vessels. Even your impressive armada would need time to mobilize." Hyunjin smiled slightly. "We don't need our entire fleet. 50 ships will be sufficient." Before anyone could object, she gave orders through her communication device. Within minutes, 50 Human Federation vessels detached from the main fleet. Most were sleek warships, but among them was a larger vessel called the Guardian. The command center fell silent as they watched the human ships engage their drives. Unlike conventional engines, these left no visible trail. Space itself seemed to fold around them, and then they simply vanished. "Where did they go?" asked Shizutat. As if in answer, alarms sounded again. The monitoring systems showed the human ships appearing directly in the path of the Sithrak fleet, near Etheria. A journey that should have taken hours completed in seconds. "Dimensional slip technology," explained Junho, who had joined them, in the command center. "We don't travel through space. We step outside it briefly and then back in at our destination." The Sithrak, caught by surprise, scattered their formation. Their lead ships fired immediately, energy beams lancing toward the human vessels. The Federation ships didn't evade. Instead, the attack simply bent around them, distorted by invisible Force fields, gravitic deflection shield, said Junho calmly. They create localized space-time distortions that redirect energy and matter. The Federation ships moved with impossible grace. Despite some being nearly the size of small moons, they maneuvered as nimbly as fighter craft. They slipped between the Zethrak formations, causing confusion and disorder. The Concord representatives watched in awe as the battle unfolded. The Zethrak outnumbered the humans 100 to 1, yet seemed helpless against them. "Why aren't they firing back?" asked Do-hyun, noticing that the human ships had yet to use weapons. "Watch," said Hyunjin. The largest human ship, Guardian, moved to the center of the Zethrak fleet. It extended what looked like giant arms of light that reached out toward the enemy vessels. Where the light touched a Zethrak ship, its engines shut down. Weapons systems went dark. One by one, the enemy vessels floated powerless in space. "Energy. Absorption fields," explained Junho. "We're disabling their ships without destroying them. Within 1 hour, over 4,000 Zethrak ships had been neutralized. Only their flagship and its immediate escorts remained operational, surrounded by Federation vessels. A communication came through from the Zethrak Supreme Commander, Vordak. His insectoid face filled the screen, mandibles clicking with rage. "You will pay for this insult. Our empire will never surrender." As he spoke, the flagship's main weapon, clearly modified with stolen architect technology, began to power up. Energy readings spiked to dangerous levels. "They're going to use the dimensional disruptor," said Junho with alarm. "If that fires, it could tear a hole in space that would consume the entire system." "Hyunjin," Do-hyun said urgently, "you need to destroy that ship now." But Admiral Hyunjin remained calm. She gave a simple order: activate the nullifier. The Guardian extended a narrow beam toward the Zethrak flagship. Where it touched the charging weapon, the energy simply vanished. The readings dropped to 0. "What did you do?" asked Vordak, his voice now tinged with fear. "We prevented you from destroying yourselves and this star system," replied Hyunjin. "The technology you stole is unstable. Your weapon would have created a chain reaction that would have killed everyone here, including you." A tense silence followed. The Zethrak commander's compound eyes shifted, considering his options. "These are our terms," continued Hyunjin. "Return to your territory. Surrender all stolen architect technology. In exchange, we will help your people. We know your home system's star is failing. We have the technology to stabilize it." The Concord. Representatives looked at each other in shock. The Zethrak's aggression had been driven by desperation. Their home star was dying, forcing them to expand or perish. "You would help us? After we attacked you?" Vordak asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "We would," said Hyunjin, "because that's what humanity does. We survived our trials by helping each other. We didn't build our fleet to conquer the stars, but to ensure no one else would either. There is room for all of us in this galaxy if we work together." 3 days later, representatives from all races, including the Zethrak, gathered on Starforge to sign a new treaty. The Human Federation would share some of their technology to help all species thrive. In return, they asked only for peace. As Do-hyun watched the signing ceremony, he realized humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as teachers and protectors. With their help, the galaxy would enter a new age of cooperation and discovery. "We were lost," Admiral Hyunjin said in her address, "but in finding our way home we found a better way forward for everyone."